Recording in progress.
Hey, so what's an invoice? So why is it important? What does it even look like? Now, you'll find the answer to all these questions inside of this video. So I'm Bryce and welcome to Virtual Accounting Strategies YouTube channel. So this channel, it's the channel that teaches you all there is to know about accounting, bookkeeping, and QuickBooks. Now, we're also building out the ultimate free course to learn bookkeeping and some of the different accounting software. So make sure to subscribe so you can be alerted when this comes out. Now, we're making this channel, we make this free course because I had to learn all this stuff the hard way when I was first starting building my bookkeeping and accounting business back in 2015. Now, if I had resources like this, it would not have taken me 14 months to get to 15 grand a month in sales. I probably could have done it in about half the time, or that's what we're kind of seeing for students in our mentorship program. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about invoices. Now, you'll find out what invoices are, why they're important, and I'll talk you through the key features with an example. So don't forget to watch this video all the way through until the end, because I'm going to be answering some common questions that'll make this topic seem a lot clearer and easier to understand. Now, also, if you're a bookkeeper or an accountant and this is considered a level 2 service that you can start offering to your clients. Now, if you don't know what the different service levels are, I actually made a video that walks you through the various levels of services that you can offer to your clients. So I'll actually put that inside of the link inside the description below. Now, if you're a bookkeeper and accountant and you're really trying to go and grow or start a business and you want a proven roadmap to help you go and reach your goals, I encourage you to learn more about our mentorship program. So we have a link inside the description where you can go book a call, see if working together would be a good fit inside the mentorship program. So anyways, invoicing is an essential part of any business. So whether you're working for yourself or for a corporation. Now, if you want to get paid, you've got to know what an invoice is and how to use it. So what is an invoice? So an invoice is a normal business transaction where, business transactions involve two parties, a buyer and a seller. Now, the seller provides goods or services to the buyer, and in return, they want to get paid. And this is a transaction, so that's the whole point. The buyer owes money to the seller. But how much exactly and what specifically are they paying for? And how long do they have to make the payment? Now, to answer all of these questions, the seller sends them an invoice which really sets out all this information. So the buyer then knows how much they owe, they've got an itemized list of all the different goods and services they're paying for, and they know the terms of the transaction. So they're happy, right? So they send the money to the supplier and the transaction is complete, right? So if you got bills, they've got to pay. Bills and invoicings are actually the same thing. So they relate to the document that is sent to the buyer to request the payment of, goods and services that they've been provided for by the seller. Now, in terms of invoices too, you can either do an invoice before the work is done. You can also do an invoice for once the work is completed. It really depends on your business model. It also depends on kind of where you're going and how your client does the business. Great. So now we have a feel for what invoices are, but why are they important? So for starters, we've touched on this kind of already, right? Sellers want to get paid, so it's important to them that the invoices are sent out as early as possible, so not kind of waiting around for that cash, right? Because one thing that will really hurt your business is if you do a service and 100 days, 200, 300 days go by before you actually get paid for the invoice. You're trying to condense that down as quickly as possible to the day that the service is rendered, or even before, as a deposit, right? I always like to get deposits up front before, so I'm always protected cash flow wise. And it just allows you to be able to reinvest in your business, grow a little bit faster, and be able to go and make more money. Now, the government is also keen on invoices. So most countries charge some form of sales tax on transactions involving taxable goods and services. So depending where you're located, GST, VAT, state, or provincial tax, right? You might have heard of some of these, and an invoice is a record of a transaction that splits out and identifies the sales tax. So they're actually required by law for transactions involving businesses. Now, if you'd like to know specifics, then I recommend you go check out your local tax authority's website. From an accounting point of view, invoices are also important because they trigger the accounting entries in the books of both the buyer and the seller. Now, they're used to track accounts receivable and accounts payable. So now that we know what invoices are, and we also know why they're important, but what do they actually look like, okay? So let's go and actually create one and then find out. Okay, so inside of my screen share, there are plenty of ways to make invoices. Google Sheets acts as a built-in invoicing feature, an invoicing template. So if you need to fire one off really quickly, but if you want to be more organized and have the ability to track payments and make reports, I recommend using some sort of like cloud accounting software. Usually I like doing like QuickBooks Online, Xero, or like FreshBooks. Now I'll link to all these down below and like have like some links where you can go and like get a trial for them. Now here we've got an invoice that I've done together using a sample company from QuickBooks Online. Now this is a very typical invoice layout, so it's a great place for us to start and run through all of the key features. So first of all, we've got the names and addresses of both the buyer and the seller. Like, who's this transaction between? Well, in this example, we've got Craig's Design Landscaping Services. So Craig's Design Landscaping Services selling to Cool Cars. And on the other side, we've got the invoice number, so 1038. Now, this is a unique number that identifies the invoice. So usually invoice numbers are sequential, so the next invoice raised by this company will most likely be 1039. Now, Below that, we basically have an invoice date, and in this case, it's the 17th of January. Now, this is the day that the invoice was created, and it's critical to include it because it starts the countdown for when the payment is due from the buyer. And like, how long do they actually have to pay it, right? Well, that's determined by the sale terms, which in this particular case, the sales terms is net 30 days. So the whole payment is due within 30 days of the invoice date. And that's a pretty common wait time, but terms around like, 30 days. After the January 17th, right, is the 16th of February. It's 30 days after January 17th, which is the due date that we can also see here. Next, we have a description of like the goods and services that this invoice relates to. In this particular case, it appears to be for some kind of custom design work. And it's best to be as specific as possible in the invoice description because you don't want to cause any confusion or delay of payment. And like if they're confused, they just won't pay. Now, to the right of the description, we have the quantity rate and the amount. Now, here the service has been provided just once, and the amount per unit was for about $350. So, in this case, both the amount and the subtotal are $350. Now, below that, we've actually tacked on like sales tax of like 8% because the taxable service has been provided, and that comes out about 28, and that leaves us with an invoice total inclusive of tax of $378. Now, before we wrap up this video, I'd like to answer 4 common questions that people tend to have when it comes to invoicing. So, question 1. So, when should I invoice? So, invoices are most commonly sent out after the goods and services have been provided. However, they can also get sent out before, depending on what's been agreed between the two parties. However, the accounting treatment in each situation is different. Okay, so like for me, I like getting paid upon like agreement and upon like the contract being signed, if not even beforehand, right? It really depends. So that's because I'm really focused on cash flow, because I run like 2 cash flow businesses, right? So I run the mentorship program as well as the accounting and bookkeeping business, which I need to get the cash as fast as possible so that I can reinvest in advertisements, team, and grow the business even further. Question 2. Are invoices and sales receipts the same thing? So the short answer is no. However, this is kind of confusing because there's a few similarities. Now, both serve as evidence of a transaction and both are produced by the seller and given to the buyer. However, the key difference is that an invoice is a request for payment, so it's issued before the payment's actually made, whereas a receipt that's after the payment has been, after you receive payment. So, question 3, and even going back to question 2. So it's like invoices are before payment, receipts are afterwards. Same thing like if you go to like the store, right? You're gonna get a receipt after you've paid. Now, question 3, what's the difference between a sales invoice and a supplier or a purchase invoice? Well, they're actually the same thing, though. They're both invoices. The difference in their names depends on your perspective. If you're the seller, then you call it the sales invoice. If you're the buyer, then you call it either a supplier or purchase invoice. Now, finally, is going to be question 4. Is an invoice legally binding? Okay, so in general, no, they're not, right? Invoice by itself is not legally binding, and if they were, like, it would be kind of tough because, like, there would be nothing stopping you from just shooting out 1,000,000 invoices to people who haven't agreed upon, right? So it's like, so in order for them to become legally binding, both the buyer and the seller have to agree on the terms, or else you can literally just find anyone's information or SSN, right? And you can just like make an invoice. They would have to pay. You'd be like the richest person in history. So I can't speak about specifics for your country, but in general, it's important that both sides have like an evidence of the agreement. So, or at least like an email. If you have something in email, like in writing, that can hold up in some courts depending on where you are. But you generally want to have some sort of agreement, or like better yet, like a signed contract. Now, you don't want to be that person that gets into a situation where a client or customer is refusing to pay, and you don't have a contract, right? It's a really kind of annoying because, like, you know, you generally need to go through like a collections process where there's a lot of steps involved when it comes to that, where it's like all you have to do is just do things right the first time and have the contract. You don't have to go through all those like hoops and hurdles afterwards, right? So I hope this helps clear up some of your questions about invoices. Now, if you have any more, please let me know down below in the comments. If the question warrants it, I'll actually make another video just kind of depending on it based on like what is the feedback I'm kind of getting. Okay, so cool. So thank you for watching today's videos. If you found it useful, give me a like, comment, or share, or subscribe if you haven't already. And remember, if you're looking to start or grow your accounting or bookkeeping business, but you want some help so you don't have to make a lot of mistakes that cause most people to fail, go ahead and click the link inside the description, either above or below the video, to book a call with myself to see if I can help you inside of our program, okay? I will talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your day. Take it easy.